Dr. Bill Bailey, and this is another edition of the VirtZine Netcast. VirtZine, of course, is the online magazine of virtualization and cloud computing. Now, I'm back in my office for this particular netcast. We've been doing the netcast from my living room, but I'm trying to get my office back into condition to do the netcast on a more regular basis here. And we may even take it outside at some point and just vary the background quite a bit as we continue with the VirtZine Netcast. But I want to talk about a couple of things this week that are really interesting developments in the cloud computing world. First of all, VMware has announced the Cloud Foundry. The Cloud Foundry is a collaboration platform that allows people to work on, developers to work on cloud computing projects. And it's something that they've done as a basically an incentive for people to develop cloud-based technologies, cloud-based computing technologies. And it sounds really exciting. It is open source, and it allows various companies to develop cloud-based computing technologies directly into this platform. And of course, that is of benefit to them, to VMware, because it will help further the virtualization and cloud computing market as it develops the Cloud Foundry process. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that effort. Now, the second item I want to talk about is Microsoft releasing the public beta of Office 365. I've signed up for that beta. They said it would take about 2 to 3 weeks to hear whether you have been accepted into the beta, so I'm kind of waiting to see if they will accept me so I can try their cloud Office products, because that's basically the idea, is that the Microsoft Office products, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and so forth, will be available directly from the cloud without having to have anything installed locally on your PC. And so that is the direction. As I've mentioned before, Microsoft is investing a tremendous amount of their R&D resources into cloud computing. And so that's where they're headed, and that's one reason they've released this beta, for people to get used to the idea of operating from the cloud. Now, that leads me into another thing that I did want to talk about. This week, there's been a lot in the news about the fact that Amazon had problems with their cloud computing platform. They were down for 2 days, and that impacted a lot of other companies that rely on Amazon's cloud platform to operate. And so that brings up an issue that a lot of people have talked about when it comes to cloud computing. And that is, once the cloud is down, so to speak, once the provider that you're relying on has an issue, your business is impacted, your data is impacted. And that's very true. And that's something that is going to have to be dealt with on these cloud computing platforms. But I do want to say this: you've got to remember that if you're relying on local drives, for instance, if you think of the cloud computing even just as a drive in the clouds where you store your data, if you had that same data installed on a local hard drive on your computer, then and something happened to that hard drive, you still have to deal with it. I think the difference is, and I mentioned this on my Dr. Bill Netcast as well when I brought this particular topic up, and that is, you still got to deal with it locally. But because you're dealing with it, because you're the one that has to coordinate fixing the hard drive if you didn't do it yourself, or acquiring another one, backing up the data, restoring the data, doing it yourself, because you are personally involved, you feel like you have more control over it. You feel like at least the process is something that you're dealing with, and that you have control over that process. With a cloud-based platform, Amazon's working on it, and I'm sure they are working very hard to get it restored, but in that period of time that it's down, you're sitting there frustrated because you can't get to your data, or you can't run some aspect of your business that's based on that cloud platform. Like we talked about the Cloud Foundry. What if you developed an application, so to speak, bet the farm on it, to where your business relied on that, and then that provider went down for whatever reason, you're impacted, your bottom line, your finances, your business is impacted directly. Plus, you have the added issue of there's nothing directly you can do about it. You can call up, you can complain, but all you can do is just believe that their engineers are working diligently to get it fixed as quickly as possible. So this whole issue has, our occurrence has brought light on this issue of cloud computing and how reliable is it going to be. And we're literally in the very early stages. We're just in the very beginning of virtualization and cloud computing technologies. So there are going to be hiccups. There are going to be bumps in the road. And you need to be aware of that, and we need to come up with contingencies that will better address how we deal with these bumps in the road when they occur. So I think this is going to be very instructive. And as we go into the future, so to speak, of cloud computing, we're going to have to deal with these issues and deal with them more effectively. In the meantime, we have to adjust our personal attitudes. Part of what we're talking about here with VirtZine and this netcast is the changing social landscape and the changing mental process, you might say, around cloud computing. How do we deal with this? You're going to have to deal with the fact that you don't necessarily have hands-on capability to fix whatever it is that's out there in the cloud that you rely on. And so we have to, in a sense, become more trusting of those that provide the service, both from a security point of view, because that's been brought up. What do you do with the fact that your data is stored out there basically at the control of other people that aren't directly involved in your organization? How does that impact your security? I work for a local hospital that has to deal with HIPAA standards. And how does that impact medical data if we were to try to store it in the cloud? Now, let me tell you, we're not going to plan on storing stuff in the cloud because, again, this is an early technology. We're not there yet in certain areas. So, I know that my company is not going to bet the farm, so to speak, on cloud technology at this point, at least external cloud technology. Now, internally, we're using VMware, and we're using virtualization, and we're building, you might say, our own internal cloud. Matter of fact, my boss and I kind of kid about the difference between the fog, which is a local low-lying cloud, and the cloud, which is out there somewhere out in the sky. So we have the fog locally and the cloud out there. And right now, we've determined we're going to keep everything in the fog. So these are changes, though, in the way we think. They're changes in the way we deal with these technologies. And so that's something I think we're going to have to address, and we're going to have to keep in the forefront of our minds as we go into these technologies. So I trust that you start thinking about these things, start dealing with some of these issues, and in the meantime, keep your head in the clouds.